Hiya folks, you're very welcome along to John's Garage this week. This week we're in for a real retro treat. We're going right back to the mid-80s, and this week we are driving a 1989 Phase 1 Renault 21 TI injection. So let's get on with it. Okay folks, before we get stuck into this week's video, I have one request from you, and that is to subscribe, like and comment on the videos. They're doing really well. I have lots of people coming back, but I have lots of those people are not subscribed. So sort that out folks, sort that out. Why are you coming back each week but not subscribing? So do that. That helps me in the algorithms, it helps us boost on the channel, and it helps the channel to grow and to get a little bit more recognized as well. So please do that and share it around to your mates as well via WhatsApp groups and all that. I can see that that's happening. So please continue doing that, okay? That is absolutely brilliant. So let's get on with it this week. Okay folks, as I said, real treat in store this week. This car is immaculate. The condition is unbelievable. It's unbelievable because most of these cars are long since gone. In fact, the owners club of Renault Owners Club got wind that I was driving this car, and they couldn't even believe when it still existed themselves, okay? One of the members there was actually quite nice, David Stone on the Facebook club. He contacted me to say he was actually behind the lens, not taking the cameras, but literally behind the lens, as the press photos were being taken way back in 1986. They were done the Scottish Highland coast, okay, up around the North Atlantic, all right? Anyway, back to the car. Let's talk about the car. So as I said, it's nearly a miracle that this car exists. Most of these are long since gone, victims of scrappage schemes, victims of rust, victims of difficult to get parts, and I suppose from an awful lot of people as they aged out, indifference. People kind of forgot how good they were, if I could put it like that. So this car originally, I suppose, was shown to the public in late 1985, but went on sale and available to the public in 1986. The Phase 1 lasted up until 1989, so this is one of the very last of the Phase 1s, and around 89-90 the Phase 2 arrived with a facelifted version, and that had a more corporate aligned look up front, matched the facelift look of the Renault 25 and the soon to be launched Renault 19. Moving on from that, then there was also a Phase 3 launched in 1992, which again just brought further updates. And in true, I suppose, Renault form back then, each update got considerably better than the rest, but unfortunately each update was tarred by the issues of the original, and no more than in the case of the Renault 21. So the original was launched, as I said, in 1986. It replaced the Renault 18, which again, a very sharply styled car, and a lot of people have very fond memories of the 18, less so of the 21, and I'll explain why. So, what happened? Where did it all go wrong? Well, Renault tried to take their traditional parts, like the engine and gearbox and drivetrain, and put them in a nicer body, a more modern body, and I suppose forward-thinking body. So available with a huge amount of extras. Unfortunately, around this time, Renault had an issue with cost cutting. They were losing an awful lot of money because of a failed venture into the North American market. So this car was also available actually in the North American market. It was initially badged Renault Medallion, and very quickly became Eagle Medallion after Renault sold out American motor companies to Chrysler. And that's where the Jeep brand and all those, they all came from that merger as well. So Renault were losing money hand over fist. Basically, the bean counter stepped in and they said, listen, the 21 has to be cost effective. So they had a range of engine and gearboxes, most of which were fitted longitudinally. However, the 1.7 litre and some of the other ones had to be fitted crossways and transversely under the bonnet. Now the problem with this was Renault didn't have a gearbox at the time that would fit in a transverse engine under the bonnet of the Renault 21. So to get around this problem, they redesigned the wheelbase and front section of the car so that certain engines would fit in there, but they also had an alternative wheelbase for cars with longitudinally mounted engines. So you had two wheelbases. Now things got more complicated because that just wasn't the end of the issue. They also had a different wheelbase depending on whether you got a saloon or an estate version. Incidentally, the estate in Britain and Ireland was called the Savannah, and in other markets was known as the Nevada, okay, but same car. So not only had you two different wheelbases for each engine option, you also had two different wheelbases for each of the body options. So again, very complicated. This led essentially to Renault saving money on producing the new gearbox, but losing money when it came to production and parts supply and support. with the model as it was for sale, and I suppose soon after the model went off the market. Now, I did hear a rumour that not too long after the Renault 21 went off sale, was replaced by the infinitely better Renault Laguna, that Renault in Britain and in Ireland may have crushed all the parts just to get rid of them because it was so complicated. Now, what do I mean by so complicated? Well, first, you had a range of engines that weren't related. You had basically everything under the bonnet was different depending on the engine or body style. And on top of that, even things like body panels were different. So the front wings from this car won't fit the front wings that are on a 1.7 litre car, and so on and so forth. So it was just horribly complicated. Also, electrical gremlins. I'm not going to go into that, but suffice to say, somebody did ask me when I said I was going to record this, do the electrics work in this car? And yeah, they work perfect. Everything here works, which is highly unusual. Even going to adjust the fan there because it's a little bit cold or warm out right now. So, when this car was on sale, where was it pitched in the market? So according to the sales brochure, of which I have a copy here beside me, this was aimed at a modern, professional gentleman. I don't know who that is. Is that me? Is that you? I couldn't tell you. Let me know in the comments. Bloop, bloop, down there. That would be absolutely super to hear. But essentially, if you look at contemporary sales literature for the time and contemporary reviews, this car was considered to be better in certain respects than the Ford Sierra, Vauxhall Cavalier and the Opel Ascona stroke Vectra, which was for sale in Ireland. Now, was it better? Well, how was it better? I suppose that's a better question to answer. The Quadra and the Turbo were definitely better than the sporty Fords, okay, or the fast Fords I should call them, and fast Opels and Vauxhalls, okay. Equipment levels across the range were pretty much higher than the equivalent Ford and Vauxhall, and so on and so forth. You had huge comfort in here. So if I was a rep on the road all day, every day, these seats are very, very comfortable. Very soft cloth upholstery, nicely bolstered, but not hard bolstering. This is nice and soft. You could drive this car all day. Visibility out of it is great. And of course, in true rep fashion back in the 80s, there was lots of different trim levels. You had GTS, TI, TXI, and so on and so forth. And then of course you had the real halo models like the Quadra and the Turbo. So you really had something for everybody in this range of vehicles. You also had nice touches like the sporty steering wheel, rev counter, steering wheel mounted radio controls, front fog lights, alloys. The alloys in this car are a particular favourite of mine, and anyone I've spoken to, they all love them. And of course, nice side skirts and body trim on this car also. So that was really, really good. Now, this car was quite popular in Ireland at one stage, and I went and done a little bit of digging, and again, I'm going to thank somebody involved in the Renault Owners Ireland Facebook group who was able to tell me that when this car was on sale in 1989, it would have cost the original owners 16,800 punts plus delivery and metallic paint, so about 17,000 punts. Now, I haven't had a chance to do a conversion to see with all the different rates of inflation and currency conversions and so on and so forth, where that would end up, but I reckon it was not a cheap car back in the day, okay? Cars tended to be a lot more expensive back in the 80s for various different reasons in Ireland. Now, what else are we getting here? So I've already talked about the specification. Beautiful electric sunroof as well, that works. The aerodynamically sculpted door mirrors, which is brilliant. But let's talk about what's underneath the bonnet. So in this particular car, it's a 2-litre 8-valve fuel injected engine. It is mounted longitudinally ahead of the front axle, which gives for interesting handling characteristics, a little bit like an 80s Quattro, in that the front of the car will push on through the bend rather than actually go around the bend. But it's quite comfortable. Well, it's not that type of car. Although you can push this car on, it's actually quite a torquey engine. Now, in terms of power figures, what have we got coming out from this engine? Right, well, you have peak horsepower at 122, braking horsepower. You have a top speed of 125 miles per hour. You also have 0 to 60 time, or 0 to 100 kilometer time of 9.7 seconds. Now, these are all pretty respectable figures. There's nothing too far wrong with all of those. But as I said, in some ways I said this was better than the Ford Sierra. Performance, ride, handling, comfort, equipment levels, I'd say, yeah, bet all those things hands down. But where is the Achilles heel? The Achilles heel with this car was running costs, okay? It had to be serviced every 6,000 miles, had to have a major service done every 30,000 miles. And in general, parts weren't cheap. Because the owner's parts supply issue and trying to cover all bases, it was a bit of a pain in the arse to maintain. Let's be honest about it. But it was a lovely car when you did. Now, this particular car, what's the story on this one? Okay, so this particular car was purchased from a garage in Limerick. I can't remember the name, but it's on the back window. I'll film it later and stick it in. It was owned by the previous owner for 14 years. That gentleman lived in Killaloe in County Clare. Unfortunately, age got the better of that man. He parked it up for a number of years and then sadly passed away when he was 90 years of age. Therein stepped the new owner, the current owner, I should say. He found it when he was involved in, I suppose, probate around that gentleman's death, and he took it on, and it needed an awful lot of welding. Mechanically, it was spot on at the time. Interior was perfect, but rust had got the better of it underneath. So it's had a huge amount of welding done. Hence, it has managed to survive. So as I say, it's nothing short of incredible that this car had survived. Since then, he's done a lot of engine work, gearbox work. There is still a few other jobs to do on it. It's an ongoing rolling restoration is basically the way I will put it. But more power to the man, because at the end of the day, he is left now with something incredibly rare. As I said, onto the Owners Club, Renault 21 TI injection. Nobody even knew one existed, okay, other than this one. Still on the road, still been looked after. Now, I'm not going to claim it's the only one because that would be a ludicrous claim, but it is an incredibly rare car, okay? It is an incredibly rare car. What else did it come with when new? Remote central locking. We have that. I've already mentioned the front fogs. We have a digital clock, okay, very much de rigueur in the 80s. We have cigarette lighter, lovely massive ashtray in true French tradition. Electronic tilt slide sunroof. Rear spoiler, nice alloys. But one thing this car is missing, which really, really bugs me, especially as it was aimed at the rep market, is a footrest. There is no footrest here. Okay, and that's major omission. I don't know why that's not there. So the car is fully aimed at comfort and being able to drive it all day, but it's missing that. That's a strange one in my eyes that it's missing that. Other than that, fit and finish is typically French of the 80s. So I'm sure you've already heard. There's plenty of rattles, there's plenty of squeaks. There's a little crack here in the plastic of the dashboard, but other than that, the dash top is perfect. Everything else is perfect. Everything works. It's just a little bit squeaky. Now that brings me on to another point. I test drove a number of months ago a Toyota Carina, 1986 Toyota Carina, which would have been up for sale when this was launched. And they're a little bit like chalk and cheese. You can see in this car, it's aimed at being kind of futuristic, refined, handsome, whereas the Toyota was aimed at being reliable, functional. And you can really tell the huge difference. For instance, this car is an awful lot heavier than the Toyota, but having said that, the Toyota didn't rust. Everything works in the Toyota exactly as it did the day it left the factory. I'd say this car needs a little bit more work on it. As I've already said, it's a rolling resto and the owner knows that. But it's interesting how the Toyota has fared so much better over time for being what would have been considered the substandard car in comparison to this. It's interesting that it's still going and still going very, very strong. Now, Renault nowadays have come huge leaps and bounds in terms of build quality, reliability and comfort and all that, and they're a match for any of the other manufacturers. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So yeah, listen, I want to extend a huge thanks to the owner for coming to me and saying, John, I'd love you to drive this car, I'd love you to feature it on the channel, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me on the journey. If at this stage you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Why are you coming back here every single week and not subscribing? Please, 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 please do me that one favor. Subscribe to the channel. Get that subscription in there. Like, comment, share, do whatever it is you want to do. I love seeing the comments. I love replying to the comments. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. Tell me you used to own one of these, or your parents used to own the 7-seater Savannah and you got sick all over the back seat. I love the stories of the cars. So please, bloop it, comment in there for me. So listen, thank you all very much for joining me in John's Garage this week. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye.